This morning, it's so important that you understand that the first thing of wealth is got to be seeking after God. It's got to be something that we drive after, that we push everything aside. We go around the crowds. We're juking this person, juking that way, because we want to get up ahead so that we can see Jesus. Look at the vantage point that Zacchaeus wanted. He didn't want to just stand out in front and let him come to him. He just wanted to look down at him. He wanted to see who he was. It reminds me of the woman that was suffering from bleeding. All she wanted to do was to work her way through the crowd, to just reach out through the crowd and touch the hem of his garment. Just touch that material. If I could just touch the material of God, if I could just see him, my life would change. Are you that desperate to know God? Are you hurting today? Are you suffering? Are there things in your life that are perplexing? Questions? Change your seeking. Make it more desperate. Luke, back to the story, Luke chapter 19. We're going to read verse 5 and 6 now. When Jesus came to that place, being the sycamore tree, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, hurry! Come down, for today I must stay at your house. Listen what it says here. And he hurried and came down and received him gladly. And he hurried and came down and received him gladly. The second gem this morning is attitude. How many have heard the term, attitude is everything? My first hunting trip with my bow years ago at the age of 12. This is up out of Redmond, California, Chico, Red Bluff area. Actually, it was out of Chester. Anybody familiar with Chester? Raise your hand. I know Eileen. She used to live not too far from me in Rockland. There was a place that our family had hunted for years. And there was a tree stand. There was a permanent tree stand up a large tree, very large tree. And I was really into climbing trees. I loved climbing trees. And so there was a string that hung down from the tree stand. You'd hook your bow onto it. And I'd climb that tree, it'd get to the top. And behind me was a dirt road, but in front of me was this slight hill with all the pine trees, and it peaked out at the top, and it had this beautiful deer trail that came right down underneath the tree. And I remember sitting up there just feeling the sway of the tree as the sun rose behind me, and just how beautiful it was, the birds. And I look up, and here comes a doe and a fawn, another doe, and they're making their way down. This wasn't like Oregon where a bow hunter can take any deer that's got to take something with these things that stick out of their heads. I don't know what those are. Oregon has spoiled me. And I'm watching them come down. They don't notice me, and I'm looking down as they get under my tree, and I start talking, hey, and they freeze. What are you doing? Talking to the deer, messing with them, and I watch as they go out underneath. And I look up, and there, the biggest buck I've ever seen in my entire life. And man, I begin to freak out as this buck stared directly at me, saying, you ain't so hot, I see you. Froze. Instantly, for those of you who are hunters will know that at that moment my bladder gave weakness. As it always does. Oh, yeah, that's what I said. Lord, help me. Because it's a long ways down. That buck turned and said, you get no shot on me. And he walked that ridge down Well, that ridge, I knew that trail. That trail dumps out on that road. As I began to pull that rope up as quickly as I could, tie my bow around it, lowering that bow down, and I'm trying to get down out of that tree, shaking. I must have been 25, 30 feet plus in the air, as high as a telephone pole. I almost killed myself getting out of that tree. Literally. I get down to the road, and I sat arrow-nocked, waiting, poised. Sure enough, he popped out on that road. He must have been over 100 yards away. Granted, I'm 12 years old. My poundage was probably something like 55 pounds. So I pulled back, and you must have seen this. I cut loose. It didn't come anywhere near. Well, it came near him probably, but more than anything, it just spooked him, and he ran into a reprod right behind me. I made haste down there to where my arrow was, and sure enough, there's the tracks where he came across. I grabbed that arrow, knocked it in. I headed in after him, shaking and freaking out. So my dad's a Vietnam veteran, and when he hunted, he wore tiger stripe camos from Vietnam. I'm coming through those woods, and I'm coming through, and this hand reaches out of this tree and grabs me and says, "Shh." Dad. Because I know. He just came right through here. We separated, came up over a knoll, and we began to let arrows fly, and that's another story of failure. But the excitement of coming down that tree, the passion of coming down that tree, the attitude that I had coming out of that tree was, this is great. This is exciting. This is what I've been waiting for my whole life. When we're seeking God, what is our attitude in seeking Him? Do we have a half-hearted attitude? Do we have a lack of joy and a lack of inspiration? How do you seek God? What is your attitude? Is it just for the head knowledge of God? Is it just to know the Bible a little bit better? Or are you seeking Him with such a passion that when you find Him, it moves you inside to be glad, to be joyful? It reminds me of a parable in the Bible in Matthew chapter 13, verse 44. Jesus says, "The kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field, which a man found and hid again. And from joy over it," let me say that again. "And from joy over it, he goes and sells all that he has and buys that field." That's the kind of joy I want to have every time I seek Him and I find Him. It's going to require effort. God's not going to always be as readily available like in salvation. Sometimes He withdraws and says, "Seek me a little harder. I have something else that is so much more valuable for you, a knowledge that is so much grander, a gem, a treasure that I have hidden here. But you have to seek me with the right attitude." I can remember as I've raised my kids at different times when we would have situations that would arise, the attitude in the controversies, between the conflict between one of them, or the controversies between me and my kids, whatever they were, there was attitude. How many of you say, "You're giving me attitude"? And I would be the thing that would check me in my spirit, and I would say, "All right, we've got to change our attitude for a moment. We need to take a deep breath. All right. Let's talk calmly. Let's really think about what we're saying here. Let's go back and get the truth. Let's go back and retrace our steps in our conversation. What is the focal point?" Sometimes God is looking for us in our attitude to say, calm down just a moment in your situation. I know you're seeking me for an answer, but maybe you just need to calm down. And what is it? Be still and know that I am God of all things. I am the orchestrator of even this event in your life. Calm down. Change your attitude. I like that Zacchaeus made haste to get out of that tree. He was glad that Jesus looked up at him, walking through with thousands of people. And Jesus looked up and saw the wealth of a man named Zacchaeus in a sycamore tree. And I imagine Jesus smiling, looking up, saying, "Oh, we're going to make history today. Zacchaeus, come down. Today I'm going to eat at your house." Let's read some more of this story this morning. Chapter 19, verse 7. We're going to drop down to verse 7. Actually, let me go back. I don't want to skip over too much. You guys will call me on something. Verse 7, correct. Then when they saw it, speaking of the multitude or Pharisees, they all began to grumble, saying, "He has gone to be the guest of a man who is a sinner." Zacchaeus heard this. It doesn't say that they grumbled within inside themselves. It says when they saw it, they began to grumble, saying, "He has gone to be the guest of a man who is a sinner." That's the kind of reputation Zacchaeus had. A sinner. Everybody looked at him and saw him as a sinner. Not a righteous man. Not a man of great humility, possibly. Somebody that was a thief to them. Someone that stole money from them. But Zacchaeus, in the moment, heard this before entering the house, stopped everything, and turned to Christ and said to the Lord, Behold, Lord, half of my possessions I will give to the poor. And if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I will give back 4 times as much. I'm just going to stop right there. You see what happened to Zacchaeus is he had this kind of wealth here. And he says, I give everything to receive this wealth here. A wealth where neither moth nor rust can lay hold of it. A wealth and a treasure that can be stored up in heaven. A wealth that I can take with me. A wealth that lasts for eternity. And Jesus said to him, Today, salvation has come to this house because he too is a son of Abraham. He too had faith. He had the faith to seek out Jesus. This is our third gem. When we're talking about the wealth, you have to seek with the right attitude, and it has to produce the most valuable thing on this earth, and that is love. Zacchaeus experienced the love of Jesus Christ. It moved him to sacrifice anything and everything right then and there. I will give you everything. I'll give half of my wealth to the poor, and if I've defrauded anybody, 4 times that amount. Even if it's my last penny, I will give it. That's great wealth, people. That is a great wealth to understand the love that Jesus also attributed to us. I will lay everything down for you. I will lay my throne, I will step down from my seat as king, and I will come down in the imperfection of human man. I will take on your weaknesses. I will become like you, and I will give you the opportunity to become wealthy in me. Zacchaeus understood that. There's something else here that Jesus says that I want to draw your attention to. He closes out this story in a very interesting part. He says, for the Son of Man, he says to everybody, he says, for the Son of Man has come to seek and to save that which is lost. You see, Jesus is also seeking. I'm going to give you a couple scriptures here. I want you to be ready. The first one is Matthew chapter 5, verses 44, and then also chapter 5, 46 through 48. And I'm going to read those this morning to you. Jesus says, but I say to you, love your enemies and bless those who curse you. Do good to those who hate you, and pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you. Now listen to this. I believe he had foreknowledge of Zacchaeus in this scripture. It says, for if you love those who love you, what reward have you? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet your brethren only, what do you do more than others? Do not even the tax collectors do so? Therefore, you shall be perfect, just as your Father in heaven is perfect. I wonder sometimes if Zacchaeus heard those words, if he was nearby, or another fellow tax collector heard these and relayed them to him. Oh, he's bashing the tax collectors. This is what he said. Can you imagine if those words were the very words on the Sermon on the Mount Zacchaeus heard, and they stung to the heart? For the Son of Man has come to seek and to save, though, that which is lost. How is Jesus seeking today? How is he searching today? I think on that day that he entered Jericho, he was seeking also a wealthy man. Maybe there are some wealthy people out there that don't realize how wealthy they are, and Jesus today is seeking them. John chapter 1, verse 6 through 9 says, speaking of John the Baptist, there came a man sent from God whose name was John. He came as a witness to testify about the light, so that all might believe through him. He was not the light, but he came to testify about the light. There was the true light, which coming into the world enlightens every man. Jesus is the light. We can all acknowledge that. He is the light. So how is it being shown today? How is that light seeking out individuals today? We're given the understanding in Matthew chapter 5, verses 14 through 16. It says, you are the light of the world. Say amen to that. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor does anyone light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand. And it gives light to all who are in the house. That's what happened on that day. Let your light so shine before men in such a way that they may see your good works and glorify your Father who is in heaven. You see, today when we look at that, at the end of that story, it says, for the Son of Man has come to seek and to save that which is lost. He's seeking through you. He's seeking that which is lost. This morning, it is our responsibility to recognize the wealth that is in our life, the wealth that God has placed in you through salvation. That there is more to us than just coming to church on a Sunday and being fed. That we too on our own must take our thoughts and begin to seek after Him as Zacchaeus did. If we have to get dirty doing it, then so be it. If we have to sacrifice half our wealth to do it, then so be it. We have to change our attitude. Why? Because we are commanded to store your treasures in heaven, where moth and rust cannot destroy, and thieves do not break in and steal. Wherever your treasure is, there your desire, there the desires of your heart and thoughts will also be. The desires of your heart, your wishes, that on which your life centers. It is a hard walk that we walk because we have to take Jesus that we have placed over here onto the side sometimes in our life, and we have to bring Him back into the center of our life and make Him the focal point. Because He is desiring for His Father to receive glory through us. By shining a light that the world needs to see. A light that they are climbing up sycamore trees to look and find Jesus. Are they finding Him in you? Are you passing by an area where there is an individual in a tree looking for Jesus, and your light is shining before man so that your Father in heaven may receive that glory? Sometimes it's just a word. I'm a Christian. I believe in Jesus. I give credit to God for this. My Lord did this. I bow my head in prayer for a meal. Whatever it is, let your light be seen. Let it be known who you are. Will you be persecuted? I hope so. I hope you are persecuted to death. Those are hard words. Persecuted to death. What a great honor that must be. What a great treasure you have laid in heaven to be persecuted to death. I think the older we get, the easier it is to embrace that, or at least more accepting of it. Wealth. Zacchaeus, a man of wealth. What is your potential this morning? I'm going to close this service this morning, and I hope that everyone in here has at least grasped the value that Christ has instilled in each one of you, has placed a tremendous amount of treasure waiting. It is hidden for you. Some of us can't see them. Some of us are more grieved when we are stolen from the tangible world than what the enemy has stolen in here. How many have had things stolen from your property or your vehicle? And it is a horrible experience. Do we feel the same way when the enemy steals the things of God out of our life? Would you bow your heads? Father, I pray that your words pierce to the heart, to the bone and marrow that separates the soul. Lord, let this be for your glory. Let our hearts be challenged in our attitude. Let our hearts be challenged to seek you with more earnest desire. But above all, let all of that produce the love that is required to go and let the light that you have showed us in your Gospels, that you've shown to everyone who is worthy to receive the light. God, let us not hide it under a bush. Let us not conceal our light. Let us embrace the opportunity for others to receive that light, to see it, and to glorify our Father in heaven. Lord, I pray for us this morning. I pray for each one of us as we arise out of our pew, that we are seeking with our thoughts, even then, as we engage in a conversation with fellow Christians or family members, that we're seeking you with our thoughts. If today we get into an argument with another, that we seek you with our thoughts, that we might subdue our attitude and bring it under captivity, that your light may be shown in that situation. Lord, I thank you for those that have made the effort today even to seek you in coming to this fellowship. Those that have even joining us via the internet, Lord, reach out to them. Lord, as they also have taken the time out to seek you, you said, all those who seek will find. This morning, I just pray, God, that they find the gems that are necessary to prolong that light in our life. We give you the praise and we give you the glory for all of it. In your precious name. And everyone said this morning,